Welcome back. My name is Deborah Shalette Wilson,
I'm Kathy McCommon.
And I'm Ann Radelfs.
and together we're the School of Soul. In our video today, we're going to talk about how trauma can be a transition for growth and development. So, Ann, you want to start us off?
Well, we've been talking about how there's so much trauma in our world, and growing up, trauma can cause us to regress. We lose our developmental milestones, and we can actually get stuck at very young psychological stages. But as we get older, we can use these traumatic experiences to further our growth. And let me give you an example. The mineral stage of development, which we've talked about in one of our videos, these are people that have been so chronically traumatized, so severely traumatized over time that they're stuck at the very youngest developmental stage. They're rigid, unyielding, unchanging people. In fact, they require change from everyone around them to adjust to the fact that they're not changing. So it usually takes tremendous trauma to budge these people who are stuck in the mineral stage. And you know how much trauma they've had by how much trauma it takes to budge them.
Well, when we wanted to make this video and each of us were contemplating what that really means, what came to me was there was a monk that lived in the late part of the 1800s, and his name was Saint John of the Cross. And he wrote an 8 stanza poem called The Dark Night of the Soul. And in our spiritual teachings all throughout history, this particular condition has been mentioned as being very instrumental in moving the human spirit to a more mature, emotionally mature place, a more spiritual place, a more spiritual awareness place. So one of the things that he said was that the dark night of the soul is a stage of personal development when a person undergoes a difficult and significant transition to a deeper perception of life and their place in it. It's also not something that the individual usually chooses. We're not usually going to go out and say, hey, I want a little bit of that trauma so I can spiritually develop. It's usually something that God, your higher power, the universe, just moves into your life and just shakes you up real good. And you can either choose to embrace it for the blessings that it can bring into your life, or you can choose to stay where you're at. I know from my own personal experience, my dark night of the soul was in 2016. And it's not an easy place to be, and it's not something that people embrace easily. And sometimes it comes upon you and you don't even know what's going on until you either make a choice to survive it and come out whole and healthy, or you don't.
And we often need many dark nights because we have been stuck in a place where we learned this is where safety, happiness, or success lies. And to alter that belief system, we usually have to have some experience of danger,
Yes.
misery, failure,
Loss.
the station of some form, natural or unnatural disasters, to
Mhm.
move us to a different belief.
Yeah, our very thing that gives us our security must be shaken, so that we have to look for another anchor. And hopefully we come inside and we find that anchor in that soul. Um, Another writer that I really, really love is Eckhart Tolle. Now, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. It's some people say Tolle, some people say Tolle. But he uses the dark night of the soul as a term to describe what one would call a collapse of a perceived meaning of life, an eruption into your life at a deep sense of meaningfulness, or meaningfulness, where you have no meaning. Life loses its meaning, and you have to reestablish what life means to you and what life is. And so the dark night of the soul, the trauma into a new transition, is not something that we need to fear, but we need to embrace.
Yeah, and that reminds me of, well, it reminds me of several things. One of the things in just normal human development, there's a crisis to move us toward the next developmental stage. But when there's trauma, then it disrupts that natural flow. Because as human beings, is how we've been created, is that growth and development is really part of who we are. And
Natural.
and yeah, and so this is really a normal process, but because of so much trauma that we experience as children, we're delayed developmentally, at least emotionally, which affects us mentally, and well, now we know it affects us physically, and it definitely distracts us from our spiritual, from connecting to that spiritual soulfulness of who we are. So we're not allowing that part of ourselves to come through because of all of this.
Well, I'm thinking of the people I know who say no one likes to change. Well, in reality, that is a preschool mindset, as far as preschoolers like their routines and everything. Whereas if we have a normal childhood, it will move us out of our routine, our stuckness, to a bigger life, because every developmental stage has its own skill set. It has its own focus, motivation, goals. And we need the stresses to shove us into the next stage, which will have new skills, new motivations, new
New
goals.
things to embrace, new ways of being to embrace, new perceptions of reality and the world in which we live in to embrace.
Going
And so
from my way, which is the mineral stage, to valuing all the many different ways that people choose to negotiate their lives that can all be highly successful.
That's right.
yeah, so what I see is, especially recently with the COVID, when I began to realize what was happening, and the and I had to make a change in my life for my business. I realized I can either stay stuck in fear and regress to having a tantrum because I have to redo my whole office that I had just got together, even at the beginning of the month of March, or I could use it as an opportunity. And so I chose to use it as an opportunity and grow my business in a whole different way. And that which helped me grow, because I had to face a lot of crises of technology and getting things together. And so that's again a choice point, but trauma kind of keeps us stuck from getting to that place where we can negotiate when new crises come up, to look at that crisis as an opportunity for growth and development, instead of just a crisis that we got to dig in and stay stuck in, maybe like the mineral stage, or I don't want to change, instead of, if you look out in nature, nature changes all the time.
Oh, we can look at the changing of
yeah, I mean, the seasons change, and exactly. And so there's this natural flow that when we get stuck in our traumatic experiences, the flow is all discombobulated, I guess is a good way to say it.
It's a good word.
And a particular time where we have one of many dark nights, I believe we all have many, but it's when we're stuck in the animal stage of development, because it's such a happy-go-lucky, enjoy the physical reality stage, that we need a real force to move us into the tender, emotional, deeply feeling, at times gut-wrenching child stage of development. So usually if we're stuck as an animal, there'll be some major disaster, whether terminal illness, our house burning down, think of the fires in California. There's
Oh,
there's always something massively devastating going on to make that shift.
Yeah, it almost, what I've seen with a lot of people, of course, that I work with is until they've had this crisis where they have lost meaning
mhm.
of what they thought life was going to be for them, they haven't reached out, to get counseling.
Mhm.
And so, and most people that I work with, that's part of what we do is we work with them on recreating a new meaning based on where they're at and based on some personal growth and development that they need in order to be able to get there, so that they start creating life on their own terms. But first they have to know what the terms are, which is a lot of conditioning and also has a lot to do with their traumas where they've been stuck, and being able to open up and heal that. Then they can really move forward and create new meaning that's going to be more helpful to them as they move forward in their lives.
Mhm.
And that's what we
And can go on collectively as well. I mentioned the fires in California because I have a brother there. I realize they're in many states. And we as a nation, I believe right now, are needing that force, that increasing disaster here, to move us as a people to a new developmental stage.
A new consciousness on how we relate to one another, how we do business, how we interact with the planet, how we interact as nations. All of this is serving a higher purpose if we can get to the stage of development where we can embrace it.
Mhm. Mhm. And that's what we're here to do at the School of Soul, is learning how to do that within our own lives and helping other people to do that in their lives.